Welcome to another episode of the Content Clubhouse podcast presented by The First Call. I'm Nathan Moore and really excited to bring you a lengthy but just the most interesting conversation with Zach Radford. You may know him from his majestic stingers, which are all over the internet, but truly one of the original golf content creators. We talk about his beginnings on Instagram back in 2016, figuring it out, how to make a brand, how to evolve with the technology, and eventually becoming one of the most talented videographers in the golf content creation space. That plus some pretty interesting travel stories and really a deep dive into what it takes to make a career out of doing this, why some fail, why others succeed, and how he's trying to help others along the way. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Zach Radford. Welcome back to another episode of the Content Clubhouse podcast presented by The First Call. I'm Nathan Moore, and today I have the pleasure to be joined by Zach Radford. For those listening who may not be immediately familiar with you, Zach, basically, if you've seen a super majestic stinger video with just the most gorgeous golf backdrop you've ever seen, well, then you've probably seen some of Zach's content. Truly one of the OGs of golf content creation, which we will get into because first and foremost, I can't commend your bravery enough for the fact that you have your entire Instagram history still live and on your page. We'll be getting into some of those early posts that were super interesting. But first, by way of kind of an introduction, I kind of like to ask this question this way. If you meet somebody, at church or at a coffee shop and you're making small talk, when people ask, what do you do? What is it that you tell them?
I tell them that I make golf videos on the internet that thankfully enough people watch. So yeah, that's the simplest way I can put it. I'm just thankful that people love the content and I love making and creating the content, and I cannot believe I've been doing this for roughly 8 years now.
Yeah. I was going to say, doing some research for this, going back onto your Instagram, I think it was March 11th, 2016 was your first post. And not to make anybody feel old or anything, but I think I had my driver's license for about a year at that point. And nobody knew how to use Instagram really at all either back in 2016. And so kind of wild just to be able to scroll through your whole story essentially on that and kind of see the growth and the progression you've made. But going back to kind of that origin. So to borrow a phrase again, you were making golf content before it was cool, quote unquote, right? Back in the day when truly nobody knew what to do with social media. Nowadays, Fortune 500 companies have entire creative directors whose sole job is to make sure the grid looks how they want it to look. But you started and kind of have built your brand along with the growth of social media. But when you first got started, if you had a goal in mind when you first took out what I assume was an iPhone 7 maybe, and posted a photo from the golf course, what was the goal? What did you have in mind then, or were you just messing around?
To be honest, in the early stages, there was no direction. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was the least creative person on the planet. And honestly, how I even got started was I was on a trip over to Germany, and there was a mutual family friend of some of my friends, and he was so adamant that I needed to start posting on Instagram. And he was about my age, and I left, and he actually ends up emailing me once I got back to the States, asking if I had started a page, and then I told him no, and he ends up getting back with me. He created my page, gave me my handle, gave me my password, and he's like, start posting. This would have been like winter 2015, 2016, early 2016. And the handle that he created is the handle that it still is today. I never changed it. So I didn't even come up with my own handle. Not many people know that, but I just kind of rolled with it and changed the password and kind of started posting. And yeah, so someone that I met in Germany got me all set up, and that's where it very, very initially started. And then I started just taking pictures, didn't really do videos for a little while, and liked kind of capturing golf from some unique perspectives through photography. And I look back, and as you said, we may be seeing some of those pictures. So those were needed a lot of work before I would have considered myself a photographer now. But that was kind of part of it. I tell people all the time, just get started, go make a bad video, make a bad photo, get better, try to keep getting better. And so, yeah, those initial photos, we might have a good laugh at a few of those here in a minute. So that was the very beginning.
Awesome. So where did golf come in, I guess, because I understand from reading some stuff and actually listening to some previous interviews that you've done, professional golf was kind of your pursuit of that was kind of what kickstarted this whole thing, coming out of college, realizing you wanted to pursue a dream of playing golf highly competitively. Just walk us through a little bit about those early days of pursuing that and kind of how you mixed in content creation and I guess how one helped led to the other and maybe vice versa.
Yeah. So early on, the intent for social media was to help grow my brand. No one was really talking like that back then in 2016, but I kind of saw where things might be going. And I didn't play any amateur golf hardly, a couple of years in high school. And grew up playing baseball, went to college, didn't play golf for 4 years, came back, told my dad I was going to see how good I could get at golf. And so I gave it a year, waited tables at night and everything. And then got to a +6 at the end of that year, started playing in some tournaments and turned pro very quickly. And had a little bit of success, but I had like no real resume to show investors to get the money needed. And so that was kind of what initially sparked social media. If I could grow a following on there, I might spark some interest from some sponsors to help kind of facilitate my golf career. So that was the initial reason for social media. Obviously, a little bit later down the line, it became to kind of a fork in the road that I had to pick one or the other. I do compete some still, and the intent would be to get back into competition again. However, I love making content, traveling, and the guys that are on tour are very, very good. And it takes a whole lot of practice. Even if you are a decent golfer, it takes a whole lot of practice to keep your game where it needs to be to compete. And so still play most days, but it's more focused on the content now. So maybe one day we'll take a year and give it a full run.
I was going to say, so what went into that decision, because we've had, as previous guests on this, a guy like Evan Thompson, who's still pursuing, basically as high a golf kind of level as he can reach, pursuing U.S. amateurs, potentially U.S. Opens and that sort of thing. And he talked a lot about the content being a means, quite literally, in terms of funding that helps, him pursue that dream of that. But for him, it's still very much, almost every day having to have that internal discussion of like, okay, what is the priority? Is it the content? Is it the competition? Can it be both? What was your kind of approach to that? And where would you say, I know you said you're still competing, but where would you say you are now where you've built this massive brand? Quite honestly, you've almost achieved the financial freedom that you might have been searching for originally in order to pursue golf. But is that still a dream? Is that still something you want to do? Or have you discovered a new passion with the content creation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say my vision for how I would incorporate both together has changed quite a bit. And I would eventually like to shoot a documentary on me pursuing the tour myself, fully funded myself. However, I need to be pretty removed from the content if I'm going to be fair to myself, to give myself the proper opportunity to see if I really can make it. And I just haven't met that creative person with me to take with me on that journey yet. When I do, I think I will cross that bridge. because I need to trust them quite immensely to where I'm not doing any of my content. I'm focused on my golf game. And if that person comes along and I feel that that could happen, that's when I will kind of maybe adjust some things to facilitate that. Because I will say nothing replaces tournament golf for me. I love traveling. I love new experiences, making fun videos, and traveling the world. But there is something about getting on that first tee with the jitters and the adrenaline's pumping. And the good events, played in a few of those. Those definitely get the adrenaline pumping as well. But when it's just you out there, don't have a teammate, maybe a caddy, but there's something different about it for me. And so I played in two tournaments the last couple of years, Tennessee State Open, and my goal each year is to beat myself from last year. So I got T19 2 years ago, T15 last year, and this year we're going to try to crack that top 10.
I can certainly understand. You hear basically any athlete at a certain level talk about, what they enjoyed most about the sport that they played, or certainly after the fact, what they missed the most. And yeah, just that true adrenaline and joy that you get in pursuit of competition is certainly a common theme kind of throughout. So in trying to stay as sharp as you can with that, and also kind of with the competition, I guess, when was the last time you played a round of golf purely for fun? We're not bringing the camera out, or if we are, it's not, super serious. It isn't exactly a grind for practicing. What's the state of Zach Radford's golf game in terms of how you enjoy it versus professionally?
I wouldn't say I've played. I walked 6 holes the other day before it rained that I would say was just purely just for fun. Outside of that, there's a couple high school kids out at the club and a couple kids in college, and I typically play with them. One of the high schoolers is very, very good golfer, and we kind of have ongoing matches so almost every time I tee it up, I take it pretty serious. And it's either content or I'm playing with some high schoolers and we're just trying to get better. I do love the pursuit of just getting better every day. Whether it's you're on the range kind of working on some drills, which I honestly don't hit any range balls. I'd rather go play or work on my short game. My swing doesn't really change a whole lot from day to day. But yeah, that's another good question. Don't play much purely just for fun anymore. Either as a camera or I'm playing with some of the high school kids and out at the clubs here in Nashville. So, but I try to, we joke, but it's serious. We walk up to the first tee and act like it's a tournament. Because I think the more you practice like that, the more accustomed and comfortable you can get when tournaments there. So yeah, I think how you practice is how you play. And I love golf and I love playing good golf. And so for me, just to go out there and just like hit it purely just for fun is tough. Because I am trying to get better and I'm really wanting to play well. So, but I did walk 6 holes the other day before it rained that I would have said was purely just for fun.
Well, it certainly looks like you're having a ton of fun too, in all the content that you've been doing. I mean, we'll get into a little bit your, nearly 100,000 mile kind of golf journey last year, took you to some awesome destinations. And of course, you've become known as having, this super aesthetically pleasing kind of brand on your channels with not only a great golf swing, but also kind of the way you film and go to these beautiful destinations. But before we get into that, I do want to kind of rewind it all the way back to 2018. Because again, as I'm going through your Instagram, you start to see what almost looks like in terms of the comparison and the quality, right? Like, and I mean literally in terms of the technology, what looks almost kind of like home videos of you and Garrett Clark and others chipping into solo cups and doing all kinds of just at home shenanigans. When did you first meet Garrett? What was that kind of foundational relationship like? And just how do you even begin to comprehend where the two of you are now versus that hotel room in Orlando back in 2018?
Yeah. So, and on the last question, I just wanted to clarify that having competitive juices flowing is fun for me. And so it's just hard for me to go out there and just like kind of careless golf. So to me, shooting content focused or playing a match against some of the high school kids, like that is fun for me. So I don't know if I quite explained that well, but
Gotcha.
But yeah, so on to that. So Garrett one day DM'd me and kind of, I think he said something about one of the stinger shots that I hit, and then I saw one of his and I was like, dude, sick stinger. And we kind of went back and forth, and then one day I get tagged in a post from Garrett and he was like, how low can you go? And he tagged me. So then I hit a stinger and tagged him, and we went like back and forth for several videos. And then fast forward a few months, we met at the PGA show, and then I started going out to Kansas City semi-regularly, do trick shots in the backyard. Steven would be behind the camera for hours on end, asking for nothing except for maybe a Chipotle bowl. And I mean, now where those guys have gotten is pretty incredible. But yeah, we would sit there rolling in the minivan down to Chipotle, trying to scrounge up the quarters out of the seats of the car just so the boys could get some Chipotle. And then Matt was there as well, and so it was pretty awesome to see like where it was then. We're just in the backyard grinding for hours on a trick shot, and that was fun. And I loved that time of kind of figuring out how to navigate the space, because there was really not many people doing it. Like Josh, Hole One Trick Shots, Coach Rusty, the Cart Barn guys, honestly, and maybe a few more. But there was not much to go off of on where the trajectory of everything was going. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. There was a few of those shots that I still can't believe we made, because they were a little absurd sometimes.
I don't think anybody could have foreseen what this golf content creation space would have grown into. Of course, that's obviously pre-COVID, and all the data suggests that like a lot of the massive growth in golf, right, kind of came out of that COVID golf boom. So you guys, in a lot of ways, were just ahead of the curve in terms of getting on the train right before it left the station, so to speak. But you brought up an interesting point about the landscape at that time, obviously, versus now. How has that, if at all, impacted or made you think about the type of content that you post, or more or less the brand you represent, right? Because when you first started, you could be a golf content creator, and that was kind of it, right? Because in the whole environment of content creation, there really wasn't that many people doing golf. Now there's so many golf people, and it's grown so big, it feels like you almost have to have a niche in some way or other. But I'm curious, have you seen that? Has the, I guess, growing crowding of the space made you think about the type of content you're doing as compared to some of your peers in any way?
For sure. Yeah. Kind of back then at the beginning, you were just purely trying to get views. Like you were wanting viral videos, because that was kind of how you would grow back then. Now it's tougher to go viral in a sense, and have your following grow exponentially. I mean, I remember there was a couple posts that I did that like my following would double in a day, from 5,000 to 10,000 or 20,000 to 40,000. And that you don't really see much anymore. And so back then, for me, Garrett, whoever was in the content at that time, we were purely just trying to grow and try to create viral videos. Now, viral videos are tough to sustain, kind of like a trajectory of making a living doing this. So you do have to be a lot more targeted, a lot more specific. And so I started getting into more like travel, showcasing golf courses and resorts around the world, which I love to travel. I love experiencing new cultures and obviously get to play some of the most incredible golf courses around the world. And so I kind of started pivoting more towards videography, the presentation of the video, and seeing how I could really make a living doing this. It's tough to make a living off of just viral videos because they're tough to actually make, especially with how many people are in the space now. Could you make a viral video and it do well? Absolutely. You don't have a brand off of one viral video, if that makes sense. And so it definitely was a time and place for me with that type of content. And don't get me wrong, if we come up with a cool idea and we go out there and execute the video and it goes viral, that's fun and that's awesome. But it's tough to monetize that in a bigger way outside of just what that one video pulls, if that makes sense. So for me, it's more about relationships and kind of the presentation of the video. I have a drone. I got some editors and we try to present the YouTube videos in a way that these golf courses can really utilize them for their own marketing purposes and honestly use them as just kind of a course overview for people wanting to travel there to see what the course looks like. So that's a bit more the overall target of my current content. Obviously some fun matches and stuff like that as well. But yeah, I love traveling and I want to dive a little deeper into the travel aspect moving forward. So you might see a little more, not a ton, but a little more vlogs incorporated into these, especially international trips, because there's some wild experiences that I've had that I didn't document at all, but they are definitely some memories I'll never forget.
Well, gotcha. Well, that just takes us right into what I wanted to talk about next, which is again, your incredible golf journey all over the world, much of last year, looking at that YouTube video, which I highly recommend people go watch on your channel. But go to places like Australia, England, South Korea, Greece, Iceland, Ireland. I guess kind of to start with, what inspired it? What did you find? What did you discover on some of these that maybe, it sounds like that this trip may have inspired you to want to pursue more things like that. Just what was that trip like, and kind of what did you learn about the content that you want to make while you were doing it?
Yeah. So I've always wanted to kind of travel around the world and work from wherever I'm at. My overall goal early on was to not care what day it was. I wanted to have a job where it didn't matter what day it was. If we were working a day, we were working a day. If we were, editing, whatever it may be, it didn't matter what day it was. And so started kind of planning this year, and things kind of kept falling into place. And the Australia, New Zealand trip was pretty awesome. And New Zealand, highly recommend if you have the opportunity. They have some of the most incredible golf courses in the world. Like the 4 courses that I played are all in my top 10 in the world that I've played. And then got to go to Korea and Japan, and the experiences there, the culture's so different than anywhere I had been prior. Just how they address the game and how the game's played, the setup of the round of golf, even like at the turn, you are required to take roughly an hour break and eat a meal. And there's no going to 10T from 9 green. And so it's kind of cool. It's a very different experience that I knew nothing about. And I was working with a resort there in Japan, and the gentleman that I was corresponding with to get it all set up, I did not realize he didn't speak English. And so I get there, and not many people did, maybe one person on the whole property. And, but what was funny is we finished the round and he was sitting there waiting for us. We had finished shooting the YouTube video and he just says stinger. And I was like, yeah, I hit some out there. And he's like, no, like stinger now. And so he points to a cart and we drive out there and I go hit some stingers for him. And he was jumping up and down. It was actually really cool. I was like getting chills while I was out there. I was like, what is my life right now? That this gentleman, we don't speak the same language, but he understood stinger. And apparently there was enough communication. He had been watching the stinger videos for several years. So he was very excited for me out there hitting some stingers at his course. So, and for me, it was just an unreal, surreal experience to be in Japan, totally different culture, but they love the stinger shot. So
That's incredible. I mean, well, who doesn't love them, to be honest? And again, I kind of teased it off the top. Like, that's certainly how I first interacted with your content, was seeing, those types of videos. So peel back a little bit on that. How did the stinger essentially kind of become your thing? I guess I know you reference on your Instagram page a lot to one particular video that you kind of credit as being like the start of that, but just, I would be curious to hear your, in your own words, what is the stinger to you? How did it come about? How is it such a big part of the Zach Radford golf experience?
yeah, so that was actually how I learned how to play golf. Tiger in his prime, just ripping stingers. And I thought it was so cool. And I couldn't keep my driver on a 200-yard wide fairway. So I had to figure out some way to keep it in play, but also get some distance out of it. And so I just started on the driving range every day for an hour. I just ripped stingers. And I was trying to create as much speed as I could because I needed as much distance as I could. And I think back when I was really swinging well, I think with my 4-iron, my swing speed was like 114 with a stinger. It's not there anymore, but it's probably like around maybe 110 or so. But I was trying to create as much speed as I possibly could to make sure I'd get some solid distance on it. And so that was how I learned how to play golf, basically, was just ripping stingers. And the internet thinks that I just hit the ball low, but surprisingly, if you watch a normal round of golf, I actually probably hit it about as high as any out there.
A big part of the stinger videos, I would imagine why they're so successful, is, again, it is just such an aesthetically pleasing kind of shot, but also you've really established this brand as a like high quality videographer. I'm just curious, how did that develop from the early days of just taking your phone out and figuring it out? I mean, are you self-taught? What was that kind of long journey of transitioning into, okay, rather than just, putting stuff out there, I really want to make this look as professional as I can. How did you do that?
Yeah, that definitely took a little bit of time trying to figure it out. Someone handed me a camera once early on, and I remember just looking at it being like, I don't even know what any of these buttons do. I have no clue how to deal with this thing. I'm just going to stick to my phone. So I just kept using my phone for a little while. I think it was around 40,000 subs on YouTube is when I went from phone to a camera that I had bought. The very first camera I ever bought was the Sony A6700. And I immediately, as soon as it came in the mail, pulled it out of the box, looked at it, typed it in on YouTube, how to use, and that's how I learned how to use the first camera. And then I've got a few other cameras since then. But I learned how to do YouTube and how to use cameras from YouTube. There are videos on YouTube on just about how to do about anything. And I had no clue. I didn't actually like cameras 15 years ago. I wanted no part in taking pictures, taking video. I was the last person who ever thought they'd love it. And it was one day, the Lord just flipped a switch, and I loved it. And it was like a domino effect. It was like, oh, I got this idea and this idea. And it just kind of kept snowballing from there. But initially, I had no idea how to deal with the camera. And then I started learning different types of lenses and kind of how to properly shoot the stinger, like the proper angle on how to be able to capture the ball flight and what lenses would be best. And so I've got a few different lenses and a few different cameras, just kind of depending on the setting and everything as to which one would be best. So I kind of just get into each setting and it's like, yep, this is it right here. This is it. And then you just kind of figure it out. And there's no exact identical way I set it up every time. There's some similar things that I might do, but every setting's a little different. You kind of have to play with it a little bit to figure out where the camera should go to capture the ball flight the best. So, but I love it. And when you get back to the computer and you're looking at it and you're just like, yep, that was it. That was sick.
Yeah, I mean, that's truly incredible. I don't think people really understand or appreciate just how actually hard it is to nail that kind of production side of it. I mean, I've learned it even in just doing this, and you can have the greatest idea in the world and hit the coolest golf shot ever, but like if your audio is kind of messed up or if the wind has tilted your camera in a certain way to where now you don't see it, like it kind of, the quality of the video and the audio like is the entire thing. And so for you to become truly an expert and a professional at that, just kind of as you go along, I think is really interesting and really cool. And I know, we've kind of gone through what you've been up to a little bit lately with the travel. You said that that's kind of something you want to get more into. And you mentioned filming some content that some of these resorts and some of these places can actually use on their own. Before we get you out of here, I wanted to touch a little bit on kind of what's coming next. What can fans of yours be looking forward to, maybe potentially from a travel perspective or future pursuits on the golf course, but also would love to hear a little bit about, it says on your LinkedIn that you're also like a social media consultant, there's kind of more of a business side to some of the things that you do. Kind of peel back a little bit on how that works. How is that supporting a lot of the other creative work that you're able to do?
Yeah. So what's next? This year, this summer, I'm going to knock off state number 50 to visit. I haven't golfed in all 49 states that I've been to yet. I think I'm somewhere around 40, but I've never been to Alaska. That's my 50th state. So this summer we're knocking that off and we're going to find a good golf course up there. We'll shoot some content and enjoy Alaska. And then I get these random golf courses just on my bucket list, and one's the new golf club in Greenland. So I'm going to go play the only golf course up in Greenland at some point this summer. We haven't dialed in the dates yet, but that's one I want to get to. So those are a couple of the places that I'm going to try to get to this summer, and you kind of have to go play during the middle of summer in Greenland and Alaska.
And I would imagine in December, that's a tough trip.
That would be a tough one. I was in Iceland last August and it was like 40, raining and blowing 40. This is like the premier week to be there. And I was like, both of the places I'm trying to go are more north than this place. But it was awesome. Iceland, if you've never been, was a very cool spot. And the golf courses were epic. Weather was a little rough.
What is it, I guess, outside of the content you're posting specifically, for your own YouTube channels and your own Instagram and that sort of thing? Are you doing much kind of, I guess, freelance work that helps support the overall business? Obviously, with the talent you have as a videographer, are you basically, I guess, do you have kind of a side gig with that? And if so, how does that fit into everything else you're doing?
Yeah. So I've taken on just different projects from time to time for brands or companies, resorts, things like that, and consulted with overall marketing trajectory and good practices for kind of getting them really rolling with their own content. So it's more on a project by project kind of thing, kind of get people started, and then they just kind of take it from there. And I've done that to kind of helping some of the newer creators kind of find their way, navigate through negotiations with brands or different places to kind of help show them how to start making a living doing the content. Because there's in the space, there's the handful of people that you see that obviously are doing extraordinarily well. Then there's a large gap of people that some have figured out how to make a living and some haven't. And this person over here may actually be getting a lot more views than this person over here. They just haven't figured out how to monetize it properly. And so for me, I've got about 7 different revenue streams, because in this space, I call it the wild, wild west. From one month to the next, one of those revenue streams may go way up, way down. And so if you've got several revenue streams, it's going to be a lot more consistent income, and you can kind of pivot your time towards whichever one is better for that month. But the overall trajectory for me is really the travel side of things, working with resorts, utilizing how I've been able to learn how to use cameras and capture quality content. That's the main focus for me, is capturing quality content that these brands, resorts, courses can use for their own marketing purposes. And so I don't have too many like ongoing partnerships. It's a lot of just like projects. And then I've kind of gone back to several resorts each year. And so we just figure out what weekend or what week, and I go knock out some content for them, and typically get to eat pretty good food, and the place is pretty nice, so I can't complain.
Sounds like it. Well, real quick, and I promise to get you out of here after this, but you brought up something that I really want to kind of bring back up in terms of folks or creators who have essentially figured out kind of how to make this into a living, and those who are still working on that. What is kind of, to you as somebody who has done it and who now is in a position to kind of help others figure it out, what is that key? What is that threshold that you have to reach, if there is such a thing, to where, okay, now like I'm at the point where I can quit my day job, or I'm at the point where I need to put all my focus and effort into this? And then what are the steps that make it a viable career?
Yeah. So that point for me was, I guess, like 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago. When I'll give you a quick story on this. So 2019, I was still working kind of some other jobs, and but the content was, I was starting to make some money, especially from YouTube. I was starting to kind of learn how to make the videos in a proper way to monetize them better. And I was kind of running towards the end. It was like, and I basically spent all the money I had left. I had my bills paid for the month, and my buddy lived in Hawaii, and he was like, hey, you should come to Hawaii, shoot some content. So I called him up and I was like, hey man, I'm gonna come to Hawaii if that's cool with you. So I basically spent the money I had saved to go on that trip, and still kind of had my job back home, but I was hopeful that that was going to be ending, but also I was kind of at the end of doing this in a sense, because I wasn't able to get ahead. So I go on this trip, film, and back then I didn't really film like full 18s. It was little challenges, things like that. I wasn't really documenting the full round most of the time. And I remember standing in the parking lot looking around, and I was like, I look at my buddy, I was like, can I film every shot today? I was like, I haven't done this. It was co-allow. Well, I end up posting this video, and that video, the front 9 video, is currently still my #1 earning video on my channel, and the back 9 is #3. And so that, from that point, I was like, okay, there's some real money here. I need to just kind of replicate this. Obviously, not every video is going to be a banger, but it was like, okay, I see kind of the recipe for how to go about this on YouTube. And to answer your question, that was the moment for me that I saw it. And I was like, okay, I just got to keep heading this direction. I think learning how to create content that has value outside the views for me was, the views are great and you still want to get the views, but if I can create content that someone else can use for their own marketing purposes that still holds value, kind of doesn't matter on the fluctuation of the views for me, as much as some other creators as to how much they might be making from content. And so that was whenever I really saw a difference in, okay, a lot more consistent income coming in, and I can just focus on really getting better at how I film the content and everything. And so I always tell people to kind of start out slower, don't get overwhelmed, because I've seen so many people get started, they just like kind of grind themselves into the ground. And I've seen so many creators come and go in the 8 years I've been doing this. And so I tell them, figure out one platform, whatever platform that is, figure it out first until you feel like, okay, I've kind of got this platform down, understand the type of content that my viewers are kind of wanting to see. I just try to tell people, go out there, figure out the content you enjoy making, because there is a balance. You have to make content that you enjoy, but also the viewer needs to enjoy watching the content. But if you only make videos that you think the viewer is going to want to watch, you're going to kind of burn out. Like if you don't enjoy making that content. So there has to be a balance, and you kind of have to navigate that and figure that out for you, because everyone's different. There's only one you, only one me. And I don't think the space is overly crowded. I think there's a lot of space for more creators, honestly. And I think everyone can kind of carve out a little niche, and there's a lot of content yet to be made. And I hopefully get to do this for another 25, 30, 40 years. So yeah, there was a comment the other day that it was like on YouTube, and the guy was like, in the year's 2055 and I'm watching Zach Radford in 48K play a match against his grandson. I was like, you know what? That would be sick.
That would be truly the good stuff right there, man. Well, again, really appreciate you sharing a little bit about your story and what you got going on. Again, those listening, check him out on Instagram at Real Zach Radford, which, as we learned, he did not coin that handle. So still the gift from his friend getting started. Also on YouTube at Zach Radford and everywhere else. But again, really appreciate the time, Zach. Best of luck with everything, and look forward to seeing Alaska and Greenland content coming up.
I appreciate it. Thank you again so much for having me.